and he summoned all of his ministers, leaders, and the responsible men in the area for a serious meeting. Pharaoh entered the meeting with a stern face. It was obvious that he would never surrender easily. He had established a kingdom on the basis of being a god, and he wanted the people of Egypt to worship him. Now Musa came to destroy all of his hard work and the reputation he had built. Musa said there was no Lord other than Allah in existence. This meant that the Pharaoh was a liar. The Pharaoh would not stand for that. So the Pharaoh opened the session by throwing a sudden question at Haman. Am I a liar, O Haman? Haman fell to his knees in amazement and asked, Who dared to accuse the Pharaoh of lying? Pharaoh said, Has he, Musa, not said that there is a Lord in the heaven? Haman answered, Musa is lying. Turning his face to the other side, Pharaoh said impatiently, I know he's a liar. I am a true God. Then he looked at Haman and cried, Oh, Haman, build me a tower, that I may arrive at the ways of the heavens, all the way up there, and I may look upon this Allah of Musa. I think he's the liar. So Pharaoh issued his royal command to build him the tallest tower. Its height reached all the way to the heavens, or so he thought. Pharaoh's command depended fundamentally upon Egyptian civilization, and he relied on his slaves to build whatever it is he wanted. However, he ignored all the rules of basic science and engineering. In spite of this, Haman said, It's impossible to erect such a tower. He said that he would continue to command and build it, but even Haman knew that it was impossible. Let me object to Pharaoh for the first time. You will never find anyone in the heavens, he said, especially if there is no God but you. Again, so he thought. Pharaoh was upset, but he was determined to win this battle against Musa alayhi salam. He was afraid Musa would win over all of his people and nobody would worship him anymore. Just as he had envisioned many years ago, he would lose his throne. Haman asked, Will we leave Musa and his people to corrupt the rest of the people on earth so that they will leave your worship? Pharaoh said, You have read my thoughts, O Haman. We must kill their sons and conquer them. He issued commands, and Pharaoh's men rushed to slay all the men once again, everyone who stood by Musa's side. Now, Prophet Musa stood watching everything that was happening. He could not interfere, nor did he have the power to forbid all of these acts. All he could do was advise his people to be patient. He knew that the Pharaoh would never climb high enough to meet Allah. He knew that the Pharaoh was wrong, and he knew that Allah would take care of him. He ordered them to ask Allah the Almighty for a calamity on the Egyptians, to bring a message of punishment so that the Pharaoh would know that the true God was Allah. He pointed out to them the model of the Egyptian magicians, who endured for Allah's sake without complaining. He helped them to understand that Pharaoh's soldiers behaved on earth as if they were the owners, as if they had no one else to turn to, no one to report to, as if they had no rules to abide by. Musa repeated his demand that Pharaoh release the children of Israel from slavery, and in response, Pharaoh called his subjects to a huge gathering where he reminded them that he was their Lord and he would provide all that they needed. Musa, he said, had no gold nor angels following him. He was a poor man. Being a people who had been oppressed for a very long time, they kind of lacked vision. They listened to whatever the Pharaoh said, and out of fear, they started to think, Well, maybe we should do as the Pharaoh said. We don't want him to kill us. They regarded their ruler to be wealthy, and he had kept them alive for so long. So they thought that maybe they should obey the Pharaoh and ignore Musa's call. Did they not know that Allah had destroyed many generations before them? Men who were stronger than them in might and greater in riches? Allah commanded Musa to warn Pharaoh of a punishment in this world for his faithlessness and his persecution of the children of Israel. Musa tried to warn them all about denying Allah. "O my people, I fear for you the fate like that day of disaster will come upon you, like the fate of the people of Prophet Nuh, and Ad, and Thamud, and all who came after them. Allah will bring punishment onto you if you do not follow his command." And then it happened. Allah brought down a drought that stopped the crops from growing and made the cows die of thirst. The Nile, which was known for flooding their valleys with power and life, did not flow anymore. There was no water to be found. So the Pharaoh promised to let the Israelites go if the drought would stop. And so Allah stopped the drought. But once again, the Pharaoh broke his promise. The Pharaoh remained arrogant. So Allah caused a huge flood, which devastated the lands once again, to make the Pharaoh see the truth. Musa prayed to Allah to relieve the suffering caused by the flood. He did not like seeing the people in pain, and so the water surging stopped. But when Musa once again begged the Pharaoh to listen to Allah and to fulfill his promise to release the children of Israel, he did not respond again. Many punishments came to Egypt after that. Plagues, lice, locusts, and frogs came, each more horrible than the last. The insects would destroy all of the crops and torment the disbelievers with disease and distress. Can you imagine, boys and girls, all of these bugs flying and jumping and crawling everywhere? How could the people not turn to Allah? How could the disbelievers not beg Allah for forgiveness and help? How could they not see the signs of Allah's true power? And then the last sign was revealed, the sign of blood. The Nile water changed into blood. When Musa and the believing people drank the water, for them, it was ordinary, clean, clear water. However, if any Egyptian filled his cup and drank the water, he discovered the cup to be full of thick red blood. They hurried to Musa as usual, but as soon as everything returned to normal, they turned their backs on Allah. How could they do that, boys and girls? How could all of these disbelievers refuse to follow Allah? Finally, Allah told Musa to take the believing people out of Egypt during the night. Prophet Musa and the Israelites were well out of Egypt before the Egyptians knew what had happened. When the Pharaoh found out the Israelites had escaped, he ordered all of his forces to go and catch them and bring them back. He himself climbed into a golden chariot drawn by 4 white horses. He whipped them as hard as he could in order to catch up to Musa. What do you think happens next, boys and girls? Do you think that the Pharaoh catches Prophet Musa? Or do you think that Allah protected him? That's easy. Of course Allah protected Prophet Musa. Allah always protects the believers. Now the fun part is how he let him get away. It's time for a short commercial break, but when we return, we'll finish off the story of Prophet Musa, and we'll find out just what miracle Allah did to save all of the believers.
I'm a cool kid, you're a cool kid, we are cool kids, are you a cool kid? Every day I want it,
Cool Kid now by visiting www.fruiticoolkids.com.
Welcome back to the story of Prophet Musa, boys and girls. When Musa reached the Red Sea, all of the believing people stopped. What now? The impatient children of Israel soon became very agitated. In front of us is this impassable barrier, the sea, and behind us is the enemy. Surely death cannot be escaped. Musa replied that he would wait for guidance from Allah. These words filled them with some hope, but man is always impatient for results. They were willing to surrender themselves back into slavery because they were just growing tired. Are you impatient, boys and girls? Ha! Who said no? I know you're all a bit impatient at times. We all are, even me. How about when you're hungry and waiting on food? Or if you're trying to get your dad's attention when he's on the phone? I knew it. Remember, nothing happens before its time or before Allah wills. At that exact moment, Allah commanded Prophet Musa alayhi salam to strike the water with his stick. When he did, a fierce wind blew and the sun shone brightly. In a flash, the Red Sea miraculously parted, splitting into two and left a straight and narrow path which Musa guided his people. Subhanallah, can you believe it? The story of Prophet Musa truly is a miraculous one. One of my favorites, if you ask me. Verily, my Lord is with me, Prophet Musa exclaimed. The Israelites were in awe, and as fast as they could, they ran through the ocean. They could hear the footsteps of the Pharaoh behind them, and they were afraid. When the Pharaoh got to the Red Sea, he paused for a moment. The path was still open, and he could see the Israelites just starting to scramble up the other side of the water. Being the pretender that he was, Pharaoh turned to his men and proclaimed, "Look, the sea has opened at my command, so that I may follow these rebels and arrest them. Now we've got them." He whipped his horses once again and yelled out a savage battle cry, which was heard by Musa and the Israelites on the other side. When the last old lady climbed out of the Red Sea, Musa could see the Pharaoh not more than 100 feet away. He was closing in on them. The Pharaoh had now caught up with his heavy sword, and he looked like he wanted revenge. All of a sudden, the mountains of water on each side of the narrow path came crashing down on the Pharaoh and his people. The Egyptians cried out, but their voices were cut off by the splashes of the water on their helpless body. The horses neighed loudly, screaming in pain. But seconds later, the only sound that could be heard was the calm water. Musa and the Israelites had escaped from Egypt with the help of Allah and were now headed to the promised land. Musa and the Israelites had crossed the Red Sea and were now beginning their journey to Canaan. Do any of you remember any of the other prophets who traveled to or lived in Canaan?